When the boss saw that the person walking in was Mark, his face instantly filled with shock, but he quickly calmed down. In his mind, this group of losers would never dare to kill him. Besides, there was still a combat robot inside the shuttle. The moment the others saw the robot, one of Mark's teammates immediately emptied his magazine. In the chaos, he even accidentally shot the boss. A true case of friendly fire. Meanwhile, Mark held the robot off, trading blows with it. But the robot's combat power was clearly far superior. Within seconds, it slammed Mark onto a vehicle and prepared to deliver a finishing strike. At the last moment, Mark kicked it away, grabbed the robot by the head, and ripped it off with brute force. After that, the group rushed to the boss. They had to copy the data before he died, but just then, a teammate noticed a spacecraft rapidly approaching. Right as the data transfer finished, they discovered the files were nothing but garbled code. They had no choice but to retreat for the moment, but by then, the enemy ship was already closing in. 2 rockets were fired straight at Mark on the ground. Although the explosion didn't seriously injure him, the enemy lieutenant, Kruger, had already arrived. He grabbed Mark and stabbed him in the side. Just as Kruger was about to cut off Mark's head to retrieve the data, a teammate rushed in to stop him. But the bullets only struck Kruger's armor, and he quickly overpowered the man and killed him. Reacting instantly, Mark emptied his magazine. Kruger activated his shield, but he was eventually knocked unconscious by a powerful explosive blast. Mark was about to finish him off when enemy reinforcements suddenly arrived. Forced to retreat, Mark abandoned his fallen teammate and escaped alone. Although he managed to get away, his injuries were severe. Eventually, he found his former girlfriend at a hospital, but he collapsed at the entrance. Luckily, Emma found him after her shift ended. At the same time, Kruger's men uncovered a major secret. The data they had intercepted wasn't gibberish at all, it was new code capable of controlling Elysium itself. Whoever possessed it could control the entire station. Kruger immediately deployed every drone from the ship to hunt Mark down. Meanwhile, after a night of care from Emma, Mark finally woke up. While she was asking about his injuries, her daughter suddenly walked out. Only then did Mark realize Emma had already married and started a family. He prepared to leave, not wanting to drag her into danger, but Emma revealed that her daughter was seriously ill and begged Mark to take them to Elysium. Mark refused. He could barely save himself, let alone anyone else. After leaving, Mark was quickly spotted by one of Kruger's drones. He managed to smash it down with a rock, but once his location was exposed, Kruger's men stormed Emma's home, demanding to know where Mark was. She refused to tell them, so they took her and her daughter back to the ship. Meanwhile, Mark went to find Spider and asked him to keep his promise to get him to Elysium, but Spider had already forgotten about that promise. All he cared about was the data in Mark's head. He explained that Elysium had been completely locked down after the data was taken, which proved how important it was. The information in Mark's brain might be the key to unlocking everything. Mark finally allowed him to examine it. Spider immediately recognized it as Elysium's reboot system. But cracking it would take 5 days. Mark didn't have 5 days. He only had 2 days left to live, so he left to find another way. Before he departed, Spider secretly planted a tracker on him. Later, Mark went to find Kruger and proposed a deal. He would hand over the data on one condition: Kruger had to take him to Elysium. Kruger agreed without hesitation, but once Mark boarded the ship, he discovered Emma was already there. He realized he had dragged her into danger after all. While Mark was lost in guilt, Kruger suddenly ordered his men to seize the bomb in Mark's hand. During the struggle, someone accidentally hit the controls, and the ship began spinning wildly in the air. A grenade slipped loose and fell to the floor. Mark shielded Emma with his body. Kruger wasn't so lucky. He was badly injured in the blast, and the ship's cloaking system was damaged. The craft eventually crashed into a residential area. Just as Mark tried to escape with Emma, he was ambushed from behind and incapacitated with an electric weapon before he could react. Fortunately, Mark was just an ordinary factory worker, tightening bolts day after day. One day, as he was closing a chamber door, it suddenly got stuck because of an obstruction. Afraid of being blamed by his supervisor, Mark stepped inside to move it. He had no idea that this decision would change his life forever. The moment he pushed the plastic panel aside, the chamber door suddenly slammed shut, and this wasn't just any chamber, it was a high radiation unit. His co-workers rushed over and tried to pry the machine open with tools, but the foreman stopped them. The machine was extremely expensive. If they damaged it, none of them could afford the cost, so he drove all the workers away. and pretended nothing had happened. Only after the radiation cycle finished did a robot drag Mark's body out. He didn't die immediately, but after absorbing massive radiation, his organs began to fail. He had only 5 days left to live. Soon, the factory owner arrived. Looking at the dying worker, he showed no intention of helping. Instead, he complained that Mark might stain the bedsheets and ordered the robot to give him just 5 days' worth of painkillers. Before throwing him out of the factory, to him, workers' lives meant nothing. Mark saw everything, and he swore he would make the boss pay, but in his condition, he could barely walk. How could he possibly take revenge? There was only one way to survive: to reach Elysium. In the 21st century, Earth had been devastated by pollution, and the population had plummeted. The wealthy escaped into space and built Elysium, a massive orbital habitat. There, the air was clean, robots served humans around the clock, every home had a medical pod capable of curing any disease instantly. Meanwhile, the people left on Earth could only look up at the sky. Because tickets to Elysium were far beyond what ordinary citizens could afford, unless they tried to get there illegally, and that was Mark's only chance. With the help of his friend, he tracked down Spider, a smuggler who arranged illegal trips to Elysium. If you had money, Spider could not only get you there, but also provide a forged legal identity. But Mark had nothing to pay, so he begged to go on credit, promising to work off the debt later. Spider laughed in his face and told him to go back to the slums. With only days left to live, Mark became desperate. He grabbed Spider and explained everything that had happened. The moment Spider heard Mark had only 5 days left, his attitude changed instantly. He agreed to send Mark to Elysium and even cover the travel costs. But there was one condition: Mark had to kidnap a wealthy executive returning from Elysium and extract the biometric data stored in the back of his brain. With that information, Spider could access the man's bank accounts and steal a fortune. Mark hesitated. Wealthy people were always protected by armed robots. Getting close to one was nearly impossible, especially in his weakened state. After thinking for a moment, Spider brought out something else, an exoskeleton. With it installed, Mark would become stronger than a robot. Even though his friend tried to talk him out of it, Mark agreed. He knew this was his only chance to live, but he had one request. He wanted the kidnapping target to be his boss. Spider, who hated greedy elites, agreed. Mark was taken to an operating table. They bolted the exoskeleton directly into his bones, then performed precise adjustments and calibrations. When everything was ready, they activated the system. The next day, Mark woke up. As he looked at the metal frame fused to his body, he felt a strength he had never known before. Now, his first objective was clear: find the boss. Fully armed, the group set out in a battered vehicle toward the boss's armory. Meanwhile, the boss had no idea danger was approaching. He was preparing to board a shuttle back to Elysium to enjoy his luxurious life. Just after takeoff, Mark spotted the shuttle in the distance and fired a grenade launcher. The engine exploded, and the shuttle began plummeting toward the ground. Mark and his team rushed to the crash site, weapons ready. Seeing them, the boss immediately ordered his robot bodyguard to eliminate them. The robot stepped out and threw a grenade, killing one of Mark's teammates instantly. Then it turned its attention to Mark. Under the robot's heavy firepower, Mark was forced to take cover behind a vehicle. But when the robot paused to reload, Mark fired several grenades. The explosions tore the robot apart. After that, they rushed to the crashed shuttle and used a cutting tool to slice open an entry point. The movie ends here. Thanks for your watching. Leave your comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out.